Okay, this lesson is going to be on organizing and displaying qualitative data. We'll be looking at charts and tables and like that. So when we collect data from surveys, design experiments, we have to organize these in some sort of form that we can interpret and look at. Data that is not organized referred to as raw data. So how can we organize data? Tables, graphs, and numerical summaries is what we're going to focus on here. So the 3 rules of data analysis. Make a picture. We can things that aren't quite as obvious before we make a picture are revealed when we make a picture. These will be things to think about. Make a picture. Important features and patterns inside the data will end up emerging. They'll show up. And make a picture. The best way to sort of tell others about your data is with a good graph, a good chart. So which one gives you a clear picture of the data? So here's the raw data. Now imagine many data sets this has about maybe 50 items. Many data sets will have hundreds or thousands of items in there. And that's what the raw data looks like. So we need to organize this in some way. So here's a table. It's called a frequency table. So here just put the blood type on the left column, and in the middle column we have the frequency, the number of times that occurs, and then on the last column we have the relative frequency, right? We just divide the number of the frequency by the total. Or what about a chart? So we can quickly look at this and see that O has the most and then AB has the least. Or maybe even better, we actually organize this in descending order. So we see we have O and then A, B, and then AB. Or we could use a pie chart. So the objectives in this lesson, we're going to organize qualitative data. So qualitative data, as we saw in the last section, we are looking at non-numerical data, typically categorical data. I mean, it is categorical data. Look at tables. We're going to look at bar graphs and pie charts. And I will have tutorials on these for different software that we'll use. And don't have to view all of them. Hopefully I'll be able to put a link and you can click on the one that you decide to use. So we will look at primarily like Minitab, Excel, StatCrunch, and occasionally the TI 8384 all throughout this entire course. So a frequency distribution, you've seen these. It just lists each category of data and the number of times it occurs each time in each category. So for instance, we've seen this before. Here our blood type example, and we just put it in the category, and this involves just counting. There are little tricks you can use within the programs. You can kind of sort, and oftentimes the program itself will create a frequency table for you. The relative frequency is the proportion, or sometimes written in a percent, of observation with each category. And all we do is we take the frequency and divide it by the total, the sum of all the frequencies. So for instance, in this frequency diet, we have a frequency table here. How do we find the relative frequency? So what we do is we look at the frequency and we total this up. When we add 18, 4, 6, and 22, what do we get? 18, 22 is 40, 6 and 4 is 10, so we get 50. So we're going to have 50 as our total. And to find the relative frequency, we're just going to divide. So this first position is going to be 18 over 50. And we typically just put this in a decimal or a percent. So 18 over 50 is 0.36. And we go ahead and divide the rest of those out. Put that 50 back down there. So the relative frequency for A, 0.36, AB is 0.08, B is 0.12, and type O is 0.44. You could have written this as a percent, so we could have said 36%, etc., 8%, 12%, and 44%. Most texts and things you see in the paper and stuff will present, well, I should say most textbooks and publications will end up using proportions, whereas like popular newspapers and stuff end up using percentages. Okay, bar graph, we've seen these. I won't read through that. You can read through what the bar graph is and how to construct that, but I'll give you some examples. Here's a bar graph. We've already seen these before, but let's attach these officially. And this is StatCrunch. and we'll see some examples of how to actually do that. I will not have you create bar charts or pie charts by hand generally. Maybe one, it'll be very easy. So you will see video instruction on how to do this in the respective softwares. Again, we can quickly see here that O is the biggest one, and then we have A, looks like around 17. AB looks like around 4, and B looks like around 7 or so, 6 or 7. Disadvantage of the bar chart is it's sometimes hard to get exact values here. So you need the exact values. We would use the frequency chart, right? The frequency table. This one just gives us sort of a sense or pattern of the data. Or maybe even better, put this in descending order so we can tell quickly which one is the most and which one is the least, and in between. Sometimes more visually appealing to have these in an ascending or descending order. So different programs, the charts will look slightly different. The bar chart in Excel, we have to use summarized data. So what that means is we actually we can't take the raw data at this point. This is with Office 2010. You can't take raw data and say, give me a bar chart. We have to use summarized data that's already been summarized into a frequency table. And here's the same bar chart in Minitab. And again, Minitab and StatCrunch, you can create these charts with the raw data. So it's a slight advantage doing them that way. Again, here's the relative frequency bar chart. It looks exactly the same, right? Except one difference. We notice here our Y values, the relative frequency, are now in ratios here. And if we look at a side-by-side comparison, we notice the shape is exactly the same. The only difference, again, are these values here on the Y-axis, or the vertical axis. So if you choose frequency or relative frequency within the program, we should get exactly the same shape. Just notice the difference on the axes. So pie charts. Pie chart, you've seen pie charts. I won't go into that. We just have a circle divided into equal sectors. So here's an example of a pie chart from StatCrunch. And again, you can click on the links, and they'll be somewhere on this page or within the video or on a separate link on how to do it within those. I don't want to show you every one of these within the video because some of you may want to use StatCrunch and not see the tutorial on Minitab. So I don't want to make the video any longer than it needs to be. Similar pie chart in Excel. Again, the disadvantage in Excel is the data already has to be summarized. So we already have to have this in the table. And then you just highlight it and click pie chart. And notice you'll have different ways you can do this. Notice I've got the legend over here. I could put these letters here within Excel. I could put those actually on the chart itself. So you can format this in several different ways. Pie chart using a Minitab. Okay, let's look at an example. The following data represent the marital status in millions of U.S. residents 18 years of age or older in 2006. So let's draw a pie chart of the data. So if you already watched the tutorial on how to do this, choose the program. At this point, I think we're looking at StatCrunch, Minitab, or Excel. Choose your program and see if you can get it to come out. And pause the video here, and when you come back, we'll reveal the answer. Okay, to make this pie chart in Excel, here's our data. And so we first have to highlight the data. You can just start here in the A1 and go down to B5. You're going to click on Insert and select a pie chart. And we will almost always select this one here. And there's your pie chart. You can always edit these if you want to. You can right-click. And if we wanted to add data labels, for instance, if we wanted to actually put those labels on, we could. You can also change those to percents as well and things like that. So just know that you can do this in Excel pretty easily and pretty quickly. And you will be expected to do this for some tests and homework assignments using either Excel or StatCrunch. Now let's look at how to do this in StatCrunch. So we have our data table in here. We're going to select Graphics, and let's go to Pie Chart. And so now we have a decision to make. We can either do this with the data or the summary. So you need to know, is this summarized data or is this raw data? If it's raw data, we choose with data. If it's summarized, it's summary. So this is actually summarized data. We have it in a nice little table like this. It is summarized data. So let's go ahead and do this again. Summary. Now this is an advantage that StatCrunch has over Excel, is that it can actually handle raw data. So the categories here are in marital status, and the counts are in frequency. Click Next. And so you have some choices here. We'll just take the defaults on all of these. And create graph. And there we go. Notice here the legend presents what each of them are, and it also gives us the count and the percent. If you didn't want the count, for instance, if you just wanted the percent, you can go back here to Options and Edit, and click back, and then take out the count. And it takes out the count and just leaves us with the percent. Excel does give you a little bit more options with how the graph looks than StatCrunch, but with our purposes in here, StatCrunch will do just fine. All right, well, welcome back. So what are we going to get here? Here is the pie chart. I honestly forget which program I use. This looks like Excel. Does yours look something like that? It should look very similar to this right here. And again, you have a lot of options on how these numbers sort of appear. Generally not that big of a deal. If you're formatting papers for a certain format, sometimes that's very important on how you do that. So in here, we're not going to make a big issue of it. Okay, so the data below represent the educational attainment of residents for the U.S. 18 years or older in the 2010 U.S. Census, from the U.S. Census Bureau. The data are rounded to the nearest thousand. Construct a pie chart for the men and the women. Okay, so again, go ahead and pause the video here and try to create a pie chart. It'll be two separate pie charts, obviously, one for the males and one for the females. And if it's already in a frequency distribution, you can certainly use Excel. It works really well with these. And Minitab and StatCrunch also work. And then when we will come back, we'll look at both the males and the females. Okay, in Excel, we're going to highlight the data, go over here to Insert, and we'll select Pie. Let's select that pie chart there. And in a sense, we're done. Let me show you how you can edit some of this, though. Let's move this up a little bit. We can right-click on the pie itself, and let's select Add Data Labels. There's the labels. We don't really want the counts, though, so let's double-click one of the labels, and we'll select percentage, deselect label, and maybe we want to have a category names appear there. This will allow me to get rid of my legend. So let me select the legend, and let's go ahead and delete that legend. There we go. And now I can move these data labels out just a little bit so I can see them a little bit better. You can spend a lot of time editing these graphs to make them look just so. I just wanted to show you how that can be done. Not really required in here, but you can really spend some considerable time making these look just the way you want them in Excel. Not quite as much and control that you would have in StatCrunch. You have more control in Excel than you do StatCrunch, that is. Okay, now let's look at how to do the females. So I'll move this over a little bit. This does take a little bit of finesse to do this. We can just take that, notice how I've highlighted the blue, and I can just drag it over. And then if I can move this back up, you notice we got the females now. And I can take these and drag them to make them a little more presentable. Let's drag this one up a little bit, this one down, this one over. And let's move this one out of the way a little bit, just to give it some space, and I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so here is the chart for the males that I did, and again I pulled these labels here out a little bit. Once I get more than 4 or 5 different sectors, it becomes confusing a little bit if you have the legend over here. So I went ahead and did no legend and just pulled them out a little bit to make it clear to see. Maybe it would have been better if I had a line there going to that one, but not that big a deal. And then here's what I got for the females. Now really, if I'm trying to compare these two, for instance, if I wanted to compare males and females, it may be better if I did a bar chart. So go ahead and pause the video here and see if you can create a bar chart using the program of choice. Alright, so here's a bar chart, and I did a bar chart, and probably should have been more explicit earlier, to do a bar chart where I'm comparing these two. Look at my legend over here, males and females. That may look better if they're a little bit larger. But again, I can quickly compare here and see the number of males and females with less than 9th grade. It's pretty even. We got a little disparity here with some college or no college degree. It looks like the females are edging out the males. And all the way through with associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees, the females outnumber the males. Doctoral degrees, it's reversed. The males outnumber the females. Okay, to create a bar chart in Excel, we're just going to highlight the data. It has to be summarized. Go up to the Insert and select Column. And we're going to select that first one there. And then you can move it around and resize it. Once you make it bigger, the labels do end up looking a little bit better, as we'll see here in a moment. And then here's a horizontal bar chart. To look at that. Sometimes it just kind of depends on how the labels work out. With really long labels, sometimes it's easier for the bar chart to be this way, so I can sort of control how much room I have here. Whereas before, okay, let's go ahead and create a horizontal bar chart. Let's move this out of the way a little bit. And select the horizontal bar. And now we got the horizontal bar chart there. Now, once we resize this, those numbers on the bottom look a little bit better. And you can adjust the style, things like that if you need to. This one doesn't look too bad, but if these labels can get long, it's sometimes hard to format. Again, exactly the same shape. And notice there's somewhat of an order here. We've got less than 9th grade, 9th to 12th grade. You don't have to do that, but that sort of made sense with how it was set up. It probably did that for you automatically just based on the original frequency table. If I did it again, these numbers here don't look that great, right? It's hard to kind of see numerically. It'd be nice if I put commas in there. I certainly wouldn't count off for that. So pie charts versus bar charts. When do I want to use pie charts? When do I use bar charts? So pie charts, it's a division of all the possible values into its parts. It's not great when you're trying to compare to, like in that last example. It is good if you're trying to compare a part to the whole. Where bar charts are very similar to pie charts, except that if you're comparing different parts, not part of the whole, you want to go with a bar chart. So example, the table below shows the percent of U.S. households that have a computer and internet access. Create a bar chart for the table below. So again, try to pause the video. If you haven't done one yet on your own, go ahead and pause it and come back and see what yours looks like. Alright, so here is our bar chart. Okay, I started with 1997. You can certainly reverse that, would be fine. So again, you may have had 1997 over here and 2009 over here, and the bars would just be flipped. And we can kind of see this is increasing, right?